Hey guys, good. I was gonna say good morning, but good afternoon.
Now.
All right, thanks so much for tuning in today, guys. We really appreciate it. Please, at any time as we kind of go through this presentation, feel free to stop us. Feel free to ask any questions. And if there's anything that you'd like us to focus on a little bit more than something else, definitely, like I said, just let us know. We can be super flexible in any of our presentations here. So we have a few more people registered, but you know what? Before we get started, let me just kind of ask a couple questions. Is there anything that anybody struggles specifically with on listing presentations or with their listing materials, or anything particularly that they're looking to get out of this class today? Okay, so we'll just go with what we planned. And like I said, if it changes, just let us know, okay? All right, here, give me 2 more seconds and we will get started. Guys, if you don't know, we are Blink Marketing Agency, and we are focused on providing really a singular solution for agents for all their marketing needs, because we have found that you can go to a lot of different places and get a lot of different content and different things, but never were we able to find kind of one comprehensive, all-inclusive strategy that really made sense and that was branded to the agent. So we created Blink Marketing. So we do a lot of different things here. If you haven't had a chance to check out our site, please definitely take some time to do so a little bit later. If you have any questions about that, we're happy to answer them. Okay, so let's talk listing presentations. One of my favorite things in the world to do. So today we're going to go
version.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Trial version.
Okay. All right, guys. So we're going to talk pre-qual questions. So what are we going to ask our sellers before we come over to their properties? Pre-listing packages, listing presentations, listing leave behinds, and the follow-up plan. So as we kind of go through here, let's talk first about our pre-qual questions. So everybody probably has kind of those normal questions that they're going to ask. Ones that we pretty much kind of stick to are going to be, why are you selling? Where do you plan on moving? When do you need to be there? Do you need the proceeds from the sale of this property in order to purchase your next home? Then we're going to want to check, public records, because I can't tell you how many times what I think I'm going to go experience is something completely different because they've added a bathroom or they've, made some type of change where it's going to increase their square footage. So then we're going to make sure that the information that we have available to us on public record is going to be correct. We want to know if they did any improvements to the house. Are we walking into like a 1970s kitchen, or are we walking into something that was maybe renovated last year, so that we can kind of at least prep our comps appropriately. We want to know, do they have a price in mind? A lot of times they're not going to share that with us, and that's okay. But if they do have a price in mind, we want to know, okay, well, how'd you get there? The other thing we want to ask is there anybody else who needs to be part of this conversation? So are we expecting, a husband, a wife, a significant other, anyone else who's going to be part of this decision-making process? Then the last thing I typically ask is, do you have any questions for me at this time? The one question that many, many people ask that I do not ask is, who else are you interviewing? Or some question like that. Here's my thoughts on it. I don't care who else they're interviewing. I don't care if they're interviewing, Agent Joe Smith down the street or Agent Susie Q. It doesn't matter to me. I'm going into every listing presentation like I am up against multiple agents. So whoever it is, it doesn't necessarily, to me, matter unless they volunteer that. Sometimes they do. Then I can know, maybe I can kind of tweak my strategy, but I also don't want to encourage someone to go interview multiple agents if they didn't have a plan to anyway. So if I'm saying, who else are you interviewing? They didn't plan on interviewing anybody else. Now they are, right? So that's why I personally don't answer the question, ask that question. A lot of people do. It's just a personal preference that, I just don't necessarily think that makes the most sense. But a lot of people out there disagree. So that's what I do with pre-qual questions. After the pre-qual questions, what we're going to do is we're going to send them out a pre-listing presentation or pre-listing guide. The goal of this is going to really to differentiate ourselves from our competitors, if we do have some out there. And it's really going to kind of set us up for success. So they are going to, with the pre-listing guide or the pre-listing book, they're going to get a taste of the type of materials they can expect from us, the type of quality that they will be receiving from us, and then just information. So kind of on the selling process, because even if someone sold their home 2 years ago, the process could be a little bit different for them. And if they maybe sold out of state, again, it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to share a little bit of our marketing strategy in that pre-listing guide as well. And the whole point is going to be to shorten our listing presentation so that we don't have to review everything as much detail. And then also it's going to make the listing presentation go smoother because they already know what to expect. So those are our goals. Now, what we're going to include in this pre-listing book, pre-listing guide, whatever you want to call it, it's going to be an introduction. There's going to be a bio. It's going to tell a little bit about yourself. It's going to talk through selling process, some marketing strategy, what we kind of think on pricing, stats, testimonials, and your success stories. So those are all the things that we like to include in a pre-listing book. And a lot of those things, they can kind of, it's not a huge guide, but it's enough that it gives them some good background information. That way, when I get to the appointment, we can delve deeper into any of those things that they want to. But some people may want to then at that point just gloss over the marketing, or they may want to gloss over, oh, we already read about your team. And so we don't need to go into that as in depth because we've already prepped them appropriately. Okay. So we want to kind of go through and show you guys what we use or what we have at Blink available for pre-listing presentations. So let me just kind of bear with me. Zoom is always so slow.
And this will be uploaded on the members portal later this afternoon. We were saving it for this particular mastermind.
Unveiling, right? All right. So when we go through here, this is going to be the pre-list, right? So this is something that they can easily read. They can easily peruse through. It's going to be, again, bio information about the agent. It's going to have our contact information there. Then it's going to kind of just outline the steps to sell, because many people don't realize, how many things are involved in selling their house. It's been a while. Talk a little bit about our marketing strategy and what that looks like. We're also going to talk about pricing. I would rather they look at this information about pricing ahead of time than me being the bad guy to present it and talk to them about how important pricing is. Now, in this market, obviously, I'm the bearer of good news most of the time, but in many markets, it really is about a conversation about pricing accurately and kind of managing expectations. So it's good that they can read this ahead of time, digest it, then be ready to ask any questions rather than me being the one to personally deliver it and us kind of going down a side path in the listing presentation itself. So we also include here some of our success stories. So this page you can kind of gear towards, and I think it's really important to gear towards what property you're going to list. Like, I don't know, like some people are pretty like niche market. And so maybe that same page will work for every single listing presentation you go on. In our market, I mean, we can go from a $150,000 condo up to a, $3 million, estate home. So we should be tweaking this to support the sales that we have that would be relevant to that particular seller that we're going to go present to. So for example, if I'm going to a $500,000 house, I want to show my success stories of homes in and around that price point. And then, some of the other sales as well. So I think that's really important to be able to share with folks. Then we want to talk about our numbers, right? This is our kind of ability to, brag a little bit and let them know who we are versus maybe another agent in the MLS, right? So just general MLS stats versus your own personal stats there. And if you're on a team, you can use your team stats as well. Then we want to talk about reviews there. So we want to pick some of our favorite reviews, highlight those there because we want kind of that social proof. And then our kind of final page there, just a thank you, and again, contact information. So that's what we include on our pre-listing books. Now, in a perfect world, I would love that these are all printed out and beautiful and they are mailed to the person's house and they get it 3 days ahead of time in a special envelope and all of that. However, sometimes real life does not dictate that. And so we're emailing links so that they receive it in this magazine style guide, so that they can browse through online. So a lot of times that's what we're doing. Then at that time too, if we want to, in that email that we're sending out to them, so we send a link to this, we can also send additional testimonials, right? Like a link to our testimonials page on our website. Or we can also send, maybe follow me on social, those types of things. So.
Yeah, your Zillow reviews is a good one to include as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're going to jump back in. So after we set that, we've really set the tone for what they can expect from us as a professional. So one thing I do want to say, guys, I cannot overemphasize when you're going on a listing presentation to be prepared, be professional, be professionally dressed, dress up. Even if that's not your typical style, I do think it's really important. And then also be early. Right? So be a few minutes early. When we go in, and kind of how we do a listing presentation is, when we go up, obviously knock on the door, ring the doorbell, thank the seller for giving us the opportunity for sharing, their real estate experience with us, for letting us into their home, for having us, go through and tour. And that's kind of the first thing we're going to do. So we always want to kind of come from a place of gratitude, and we really do appreciate this opportunity. And I think it's important that people know that. So the first thing we're going to do after we, thank the seller for letting us there, we're going to ask if we can kind of put our things down. If I have a bag and my laptop, can I put this down, at the table that we'll sit at, whether it be kitchen table, dining room table. So we'll put our things down, and then we're going to go through and we're going to tour the home. I like to tour the home with the seller because I like for the seller to tell me, things that they've done to the house. So have they made improvements? Have they made some changes? And tell me too, as we're going through, like, what do you love about your house? As people are talking about their sunroom, oh, this is my favorite place to sit because I love to watch the sunset. Those are the types of things that as we then go back and write our descriptions that we're going to want to kind of, make note of during that time. So as we go through and we're touring the home, we're talking about certain things. We're talking about, do you plan on doing anything to the house to prep it for sale that maybe you have not done yet? No, give us some ideas is usually what they're going to say to us, or tell us what we need to do. So as we go through and we look at the tour, and I'm taking notes and, noting if we've got hardwood floors, or noting, if we have, anything specialized in the property, we're also going to talk through some, basic staging things. We're going to talk through things that I would probably say and are going to be in the listing presentation. There would be things like, I love those window treatments that you have there. Those are absolutely beautiful. They maybe window treatments with, patterns like that. They don't necessarily photograph really well. I always kind of put things back on the photos, like blame everything on my photos, because if you have too many things out on your end tables, I always blame it on the photos. They just don't photo well. We can't really capture, how beautiful your items are here and how pretty the presentation is in the photos, because reality is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we're all looking at homes on our phone. So we're looking at a really small picture of your house. So we want to make sure that we're focusing on the right things and that folks aren't getting distracted by smaller items in the photos, right? We want them to focus on the main things in the house. So as we're going through, we're kind of talking through things like that. And we'll go through some of those a little bit later as well. After we're done, we're going to sit down at the table and we're going to start our presentation. Then when we're finished our presentation, we're going to try to close it up, get everything signed. If that does not happen, and there's no way that anybody's going to get anything signed today because they have to talk to their sister's best friend's cousin's wife's, neighbor, because they're also an agent, then we'll be making sure that we're doing consistent and really kind of systematic follow through. Okay. Anybody have any questions at this time? Okay. Oh, sorry, bear with me one sec here. All right, so let's talk through the listing presentation. Like I said, Zoom so slow. So we also do this in an issue. So if you see here, I do like this kind of fluid style that issue allows us to present, like a magazine. We can also do it like as a PDF. There's a lot of different ways we can do our presentation. I do like issue. We do it this way a lot. Sometimes we'll just do a regular PDF presentation as well. But as we go through here again, first, it's going to reiterate some of the information that was on the pre-listing book, because maybe they did not look at that, or maybe for some reason they did not receive it. So it's going to go through that. We're not going to necessarily go through that at this time, but then we're going to, again, have information about ourselves. And then if we're on a team, we're going to have information about our team, because we're going to want to talk, if we are on a team, and even if we're not on a team, maybe the additional people that they may encounter during the process. So, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I am part of the Gary Mercer team. And on our team, we also have a listing manager, a closing manager, inside sales, and a marketing manager. And these are some of the people that you may hear from during the time that we have your home listed and as we're going through the sale and settlement process. So we like to introduce them so that they know that up front, and that they have a large support system around them. Okay, so then we're going to talk about the 3 things that are really going to impact them and their sale. The condition and the preparation, which I personally think is the most important thing we can do for any listing. The pricing, and then the marketing as well. So these are the 3 things that we're going to go through today, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. And if you have any questions, please feel free, let me know. So the first thing we're going to talk about is really kind of what we talked about when we walked through your home. So we mentioned some of the things. So maybe go back and kind of hit on those. Like, we love that Oriental rug that you have there, but again, it just doesn't photo great. And we really want to showcase your hardwood floors because they're so phenomenal. And they're such a hot, item for buyers right now. So kind of go through some of those things again, and they're going to be kind of taking notes. And, you can say, don't worry, I'm going to follow up with you, and I'm going to, send a list just so that you remember some of these things as well. We're going to talk through some other things. We're going to talk through a pre-listing inspection. So I am somebody who feels very strongly about pre-listing home inspections. I do, because I don't like surprises, right? There's nothing worse than having a seller be very pleased, or even not pleased, with the negotiations that happened on the sale of their home, to only find that they have $10,000 of items that need to be repaired, or concessions, or something like that. I want to know that up front, right? Because I want to be on the defense. So when we recommend pre-listing inspections, we're going to just be really clear. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, doing a pre-listing inspection, it does not mean that you have to go in and fix every single thing that you find on that inspection report, but it gives us the ability to perhaps fix those things that we know are going to be really important to sellers, or can kind of really spook them, right? So if we find like a little bit of mold, we're going to want to definitely address that ahead of time, because that could really go south very quickly in a transaction. The other thing is, if we have safety issues, maybe there's electrical, there's something that's actually serious, we would want to maybe have those fixed prior. And the beauty of it is, you get to pick the contractor then, because you have all the information, so you're in the driver's seat. So you can go interview 15 people and get the best quote possible for the electric or the handyman work or whatever it may be. But again, you're the one who gets to make the decisions. And everything else we just disclose. So we're just saying to the buyers, here's all the information. Don't come back and ask to negotiate on this plumbing issue, because we already disclosed it. So you're buying this house understanding that this is what it is. And if you're going to come back and you're going to try to negotiate something, it has to be something new that you were not aware of that was missed on this inspection. Okay, so that's kind of how we talk about that. Now, in our crazy market today, we've got people waiving inspections left and right. So it's almost, you kind of think through which properties you want it on, given our interesting market conditions right now. But for the majority of the time, up until I would say about 2 months ago, I was pretty much recommending most homes, unless they were like very new, get a pre-list inspection.
And Sharra, can you explain how you talk to them about paying for it and how they get that return up front?
Yes, absolutely. So any pre-list inspection, it's probably going to cost you, I would say, around $550 to $650. And that money there that you're going to put out, you're going to get multiple times back over. And here's why. Because you're not going to be asked for this huge credit amount due to something that they don't know, right? So buyers always think that there's going to be something catastrophic, like some kind of catastrophic cost attached with whatever that repair is. And in reality, we know we can get it done for something much more reasonable. So you're going to make that cost up, because the other thing is sometimes what we do is we get inspection reports that have ranges, right? And so they have ranges of the cost of those items that need to be repaired. And so if somebody's taking the high end on the range, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you know, you're not going to make out in that situation. And that's not going to be a great negotiation for you. So absolutely. Now, the other thing we like to do with pre-inspections too is giving that information up front. It allows the buyer to comfortably waive an inspection. Listen, no one ever can advise, you know, we can't advise our clients to waive inspections. We can tell them all the tools that they can use, right? And you never feel good about it, but in today's market, that's what they may have to do. If I, as a buyer's agent, am given a pre-list inspection, I breathe a sigh of relief. At least my buyers know what they're walking into. So if they have to waive an inspection, at least we know what should be pretty much the major defects. I mean, most of the time, fingers crossed, we don't get, you know, something that's completely off the wall. That's missed. It's mostly kind of silly, small stuff, but it really gives those buyers a level of comfort in waiving inspections. So we do provide it for that reason as well. Let's see here. Let me see. Do you have any questions, or is that good? Yep. Who pays for it? Yep. Okay. Excellent. So yeah, seller definitely pays for it. Absolutely.
Someone asked, when a buyer does an inspection after you've already done one, how often are the new inspectors finding new issues?
Every single time. Every single time.
Yeah.
The inspector has to find something, right? They were hired to do this. Hopefully it's not something major. Hopefully it's, you know, little things here and there, right? But, you know, I've had one, let's see, I had one, gosh, I guess it settled in the beginning of January, where an inspection was done. I represented the buyers, and my inspector came through, and he did find a number of things that kind of added up, but they were like windows, like broken seals on windows, like that kind of thing. So yeah, they absolutely will find something. I can promise you that. That's their job. So they will do that.
And then another question is, where do you share to the buyer that there was a pre-listing inspection, and do you add that to the forms listed in the MLS?
Absolutely. So we'll upload that like with the seller's disclosure. So in the seller's disclosure, at least in Pennsylvania, you can add that like as an additional attached document. And so a lot of times what I'm going to have my sellers do is, once we get that report, they can go through, and I don't care if they mark it up and they highlight and they X out like what they took care of, and then they put those receipts with that document as well, so that we have the documentation for that. That's typically what we're going to do. And if they don't do anything, we're just going to say they didn't do anything. And, you know, we go that route too. So that's completely fine. And if it's something like, you know, if it's something that could be big, or could be, you know, something, you know, maybe that would be kind of hard to wrap your head around financially, we can also then, that gives us the ability to go get estimates too. Like a tough one is like if a retaining wall is starting to fail or something like that, you know, that may be something where I want to go get a solution so that I can handle any objection that comes up. And so that we can be proactive in knowing what's going to kind of come across, you know, at least our desk, and I have a rebuttal for that. Okay. All right. So a lot of times we're telling folks the same thing, you know, when you prep your house, there's a couple things that you're going to want to do. One of the things I think that always makes such a good impression is just painting the front door. Power washing, that's another one that we recommend time and time again. Putting up a new wreath on your front door. You know, making sure those windows are clean so you're getting a nice, bright, you know, sunny house. Then on the interior, you know, obviously doing some depersonalization. I think the biggest bang for any seller's buck is to get a house painted. A fresh coat of neutral paint it just makes the biggest difference in the world. It truly does. So it is worth it all day long to spend that money. And then I'm always trying to make sure we get in front of sellers before they do that. I had a seller paint their house before I got in front of them white, like stark white, almost blue. And they did it with a sheen, just like a shiny finish too. Oh, it was so tragic. But anyway, the household. But yeah, so we want to be able to get in there. We want to help the sellers because they always do. What color paint do we use? You know, my kind of go-to is City Loft by Willams. That's kind of my go-to. That's what a lot of the big builders, the national builders, use in their homes. So I do like that. It's like a nice, really bright grayish, but real light. Okay, so those are the types of things that we're going to recommend. I'm always going to recommend too, you know, taking down, like I said before, those window treatments, pulling up the rugs. You know, sometimes it's freshening up pillows, it's putting fluffy white towels. So we kind of go through that whole list of things that's kind of along here. Then we're going to give them some staging tips too, just some like DIY staging recommendations, you know, kind of reiterating some of what we already talked about. Okay, so we also talk about staging solutions. So there's going to be some homes that we're going to want to stage. So we kind of talk through that, you know, what is the difference when, you know, before and after staging photos. I am a huge believer in staging. You know, a lot of times I will bring a stager in to maybe even bring in accessories if we can at least use the bones that are here. And you know, and if we can, at least we can do what, like a walk and talk through the house with a stager, if that's needed as well. Again, in certain markets, at certain timeframes, we don't necessarily need to, we need to do it more so than we do right now. In our market, you know, we could really sell almost anything right now because of the severe lack of inventory. Then we talk about virtual staging too. So we do a lot of virtual staging because I explain to sellers, especially if the home's vacant, you know, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, we know, we can feel how big the house is, but it is really odd. When a house is vacant, it always feels smaller. That's why builders furnish model homes. So they always do feel smaller, and it just doesn't do your house justice. Especially again, when we go back and we're looking at those photos on, you know, on our iPhones, you know, we really just can't grasp the space. So we love to do virtual staging if the house is vacant. Sometimes what we've done is we've got as far as virtually, you can see virtually painting in some of these photos. We've done virtual renovations. We've had to get creative in certain markets. So that's something that that we definitely will advise at certain markets, I would say. So. All right, then we talk about buyers, like where do our buyers come from? And the long and the short of it is really just everybody's coming online in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes, you know, when we look at those stats, they don't necessarily make a whole lot of sense. But when they say realtor, a lot of it is like me as an agent sending this off to all my clients, right? So we talk about how we're going to market the home. And, you know, people's markets may be a little bit different, but we really utilize coming soon strategy. So our MLS allows us to put a home in the MLS up to 21 days prior to it going active on the market. So the reason we do these coming soon, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we like to do them at least a week ahead of time, is because we want people to arrange their schedules according to when you are going on the market. And believe it or not, that's what people do. So we go coming soon. You're going to start to see a lot of stalkers around your house. So you're going to see people doing drive-bys. You may see people kind of peeking around the backyard. But just know that they're doing their due diligence, and likely they've already made an appointment so that that moment your house goes active on the market, that those are one of the first people in the house. I have people arrange travel plans around a house going active. It's very interesting, and it's very serious right now because, again, of the lack of inventory. So we talk about coming soon, and we talk about kind of strategic listing, right? So I like to do a coming soon, like I said, at least a week ahead of time. It gives enough time for pretty much most of the buyers to see, to do a drive-by, to schedule their appointments. Then I like to go live active on a Thursday or a Friday, showings all through the weekend. In this market, I'm telling my folks to pack up and go away for the weekend. So I'm flat out saying, you really need to plan a little vacation over the weekend. And hopefully by the time you get back, or hopefully during the time, I may have offers for you while you're away. But you know, we will have all offers due on Monday, and then we're going to have to sit down and we're going to have to review on Monday. So that is my preferred way of kind of listing. In terms of time frame, I think that really works the best and gives the seller the most exposure. Okay. We're not necessarily doing a lot of open houses in our market right now. Some people are. I tend not to right now, and it's, you know, personal preference for everybody, but here my thoughts on it is just that, you know, anybody who's a real serious buyer is going to be making an appointment to get into the property. And I find that a lot of times open houses are more casual type looking buyers. So we want to make sure we get all the qualified buyers in during that time frame there. So we talk through to, you know, our social media marketing. We talk through, you know, targeted marketing, reverse prospecting, things that we do in order to get the most eyes on their property, right? Because we're not only marketing direct to the buyers, we're also marketing to agents, right? They're also a target audience for us. So we want to make sure that everybody is aware of your property and is aware of, you know, all the particulars about it as well. Okay. So you can see here some of the, we do a ton on social media. We are firm believers in really kind of getting the word out through social. It's amazing how many agents that's how we find out about properties, through social. And then it's also for buyers. I mean, you never know, like I always see folks tagging a friend, tagging a husband, tagging a wife on our posts as well. So it's extremely effective. All right. The next thing that we talk about photography, talk about videography and how that plays an incredibly important part in how we're going to capture the home. Then we also talk about, you know, during certain seasons, we may have to enhance the photography, right? We may have to do some enhancements because no matter what day we go out there, I mean, there's going to be kind of an off-colored sky. So we always talk about, you know, how we can enhance the photo and don't stress out that your grass isn't perfect. Then we also talk about aerial photography and then video tours when and where those are applicable. We talk about too, you know, your house is going to be on every single major portal. So we are everywhere the buyers are looking for homes. And we talk about pricing. So hopefully a lot of this has already kind of been absorbed by the buyer, or excuse me, by the seller, and that they have a good sense of kind of, you know, why it's so important to price accurately in this market. Now, what we kind of talk through is, you know, market value. We're going to look at market value. We're going to determine market value today based on the comps that we're going to show you. And what's so important about pricing right is that we really are going to get the most eyes on your property, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, during really, I mean, this graph here, this is kind of, you know, a historical overview, but in today's market, we're going to get the most eyes on the property that first day that you go on the market. So that curve, while it looks like this, it actually is more like going straight down. So the more eyes you get on the property in the first time is going to be better for the seller. You never get a second chance to make a first impression, right? And with pricing, that is so important. A lot of times people say, well, if they don't like my price, I'll just reduce my price, right? And so then we have to go into that discussion where, you know, a lot of times that price reduction gets lost in the mix and people are only looking at those new listings. And so the longer, you know, the longer you're on the market, the less you're essentially going to get for the property. And then after that, we typically will go through the comps. So here, this goes to like the rest of kind of our presentation of, you know, things to expect once we go under contract, talks about negotiations, home inspections, those types of things. And I'm going to say, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this is going to be a great reference for you. So just hold tight onto the presentation that I'm going to leave you here with, because you can go back and you can reference the different parts of the transaction. Just know we're going to be here for you every step of the way, but this is a great reference for you as well. There's also some frequently asked questions and some other notes in here too that you guys can take a look at, you know, at your convenience. But really at this time, what we want to do is we want to talk price. Because here's the thing, guys, no one is going to listen to us if we talk price in the very beginning. So if we start out our conversation talking about pricing their home and we're not showing our value proposition, your value proposition is getting lost, because the only thing that they're thinking of from the moment you say a dollar amount is, how can I get more? Can I get less? Why is my property price? That's all they're thinking about. And you lost them for the rest of the presentation. So I always keep pricing at the end of my presentation. we always make sure too that, we're asking, we're kind of checking in, as we're going through them, we're looking at our comps, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. So this is the house that's down the street. What do you think about this? This is your neighbor's house. How do you feel like that compares to yours? And get them to start answer. Oh gosh, I didn't realize they had such a nice kitchen. They'll come to as you go through those comps, they're going to come to the realization on where they should be priced for the most part. And so kind of getting them involved in the process, and they're always really interested as well. So they're looking like, oh, what did they do with our house? Those types of things. So that's kind of how we establish our pricing. And we're going to give them 3 different options. So we're going to say, listen, I'm not going to price your home. What do you think your price is worth? Okay, if that's kind of where I'm thinking, then, we have a couple different options. So you can kind of price high, you can price at market value, or you can price under market value. And then we go through, okay, well, pricing at market value in our current market, even doing that, you are still going to be in a multiple offer situation, and we are going to get over asking price in most cases. If you though price too high, even in this market, because I've seen it done, if you price too high and you price, you kind of price yourself out of the market, you're not going to see those multiple offers. So buyers still have a very strong sense of value, right? These buyers have been looking for homes at this point, many of them for 1 to 2 years. And so they know what the values are, right? They know what they can expect, what they can get for a certain price point. And they also know what those monthly payments are, so they know when they can go over. And then they're willing to do so to get the home that they want and they desire. But pricing it above does not work in this market. I don't think it works in any market necessarily, but you're going to get the strongest price and the strongest terms when you price at market value. You can never underprice your house, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, because the reality of it is the market really determines the price, not me or you. And so the market is going to pay, and the buyer is going to kind of bring the price up or down based on what the perceived value and how the market's really kind of accepting your property. And so that's kind of what we talked through at that point. After we go through the comps and we kind of are, mostly on the same page with price, I always tell people, listen, you can also think on it. You don't have to commit a price to me right now. Why don't you guys take this information? If you're not feeling comfortable with a specific price right now, then take this, read this over, kind of absorb the comps and all the information. And from there, we can kind of continue the discussion, and you can determine your price up to the day that we go coming soon. So there's no pressure there. So you don't have to make that decision. The only decision that you have to make today is, are we going to list our property with? So once we do that, we'll kind of go through, what our expectations are with listing contracts. So here's the thing, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I never want to be in a contract with someone who doesn't want to work with me. So if you feel at any time during the listing, the listing contract, that we're not doing our job or we're not upholding our end of the bargain here, then you just let us know and you want to get out of the contract, then absolutely, that's fine. And that's really how we believe, because we feel that like every day we really have to kind of earn the right to be selling their house. So that's kind of what we go through as we, kind of end the presentation. So we're going to bring in listing paperwork and we're going to try to get it signed there. If the seller is like, nope, again, I have to talk to my mother's, sister's, brother's, cousin, whatever, then we will schedule some type of follow-up. Right? Okay, great. Is it okay then if I reach out to you in 24 hours? I have some more thoughts. I'd like to think about your property a little bit more, and I'm going to follow up with you in about 24 hours. And I'm going to have a little bit, maybe more specific marketing plan based on what I've seen here today. So that's kind of how you can end the presentation. Just make sure that you set a date when you're going to follow up with them, and then you do follow up with them on that date. Okay. So let's jump back here. Oops. All right. So follow up. Regardless if you get the listing, you don't get a commitment, you're going to send them an email summary. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. I appreciate your time. I know it's valuable. Just to recap of some of the things that we talked about today, here, some of the recommendations that we thought about, that we discussed. If you have any particular questions, let me know. Then, you can let them know what to expect next. So I'll follow up with you again in 24 hours and we can touch base. If you think of any questions in the meantime, please let me know. We talk about also, there's some properties, depending on price point, where I'm going to follow up with a specific marketing plan. So if I know that, again, I'm up against multiple agents and maybe the property is a little bit more complex and I have to do kind of a two-step, one of the other things that I'll do is we can kind of follow up with more of a specific marketing plan based on their home exactly. And so it's pretty specific at that point what we're going to do every step of the way. We want to schedule follow-up and make sure in our calendars, because we all know how busy we get. Even if I have the best intentions to call somebody in 24 hours, if it's not in my calendar, it is not going to happen. So make sure you have those every single time you make that commitment to call somebody back, that you have it in your calendar to remind you to make that phone call or to do that follow-up. So that should, again, go out like almost, every few days, or, if this is a longer term, make sure that they're on some type of long-term follow-up plan. I'm kicking myself. I told Alex this earlier today. I talked to 2 people probably in the summer that were not very serious buyers and, quite unrealistic. And they just weren't really, sellers. They just weren't realistic. One was like a for sale by owner. The other guy he only bought his house a couple of years ago. He probably couldn't get out of it, even in today's market, or even in 6 months ago's market. But in today's market, he can probably get out of it. So I just found out, and that's my fault for not doing my long-term consistent follow-up with those 2 people, where, even when you think this person is never going to sell, or the house is never going to sell, or you don't want to be involved, make sure you do that long-term follow-up anyway, because I'm kicking myself, because you don't know when the market's going to change. You don't know, when you may desperately need some inventory. So just make sure you do that long-term follow-up consistently on even those very, very like weak phone calls that you may get, because it'll, it could pan out. So let's see here. At this point, can I ask we can kind of open it up, see if anybody has any questions. If there's anything, we can kind of go through things to remember. Guys, this is the most important thing I think I can say. Do not practice your listing presentation on your clients.
Yes.
Practice with your colleagues. I can't tell you how many people go out. Guys, when I first learned my listing presentation and I was kind of piecing together like from different people, I would listen to it over and over and over and over, and I would say it in my sleep. I wrote it down 15 times. I mean, yeah, don't practice on your clients. Be polished, be professional, be prepared. Always know your numbers, know your comps. I mean, that is kind of where you come in. And that's obviously something we can't necessarily teach today, but know your numbers, know those comps inside and out, so that you can, because a lot of times, guys, the clients may know those houses better than you because they're watching the values of their neighborhood as well. You do not want them to know the neighborhood better than you do. And then consistent follow-up, always key.
Share a few questions. What do you use for your calendar? I just use
Gmail.
Google Calendar.
Yeah, we just use just a Google Calendar.
And then can you tell me what you leave behind in writing?
This exact thing that we just went over. So I bring a printout of that presentation that we just went through. I put my comps in, but we bind it really nicely. We put comps in there as well. I give my clients the highlighted note-taking version of the client full that I print out from our MLS. So I'm making notes on there because they don't necessarily know how to read those, right? So like when there's a seller concession of $10,000, I bring it up to the top and I make notes on it. This is really what the net was. And we want to kind of maybe circle some things that they should be aware of. New heater, new roof, whatever it is. So I give them that version with some notes on it and highlight it. And I put that all together is bound.
And sometimes people will take the listing presentation and instead of taking the full presentation and putting it into the issue, will put the most important parts that they want to go over with their during their presentation, and leave all the other stuff that might be more fluff for them with the one that they bind and leave on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. you can kind of go over those key points, maybe electronically in your presentation. And then again, sometimes, I'm not gonna, if I need Wi-Fi because I'm going, I'm showing somebody like a link to something in real time or whatever I may be doing. If we're looking up, like sometimes I will pull up comps in the MLS and I will show them like, okay, well then if we adjust your price this way or this way, here's going to be our competition now, or these are all the homes in the district that are for sale. So we may do some things live real time. That's why I like to have my computer with me. But if I don't have it, or if I don't have a connection, then we're just going through the presentation because it's the same. So we're going through the bound presentation. I'm pointing things out to them. So we can do it either way.
And an iPad or a computer are great. Or, a lot of people like to use the iPad as well.
Yep, absolutely. Let's see here. Any more?
Drop off a copy of your presentation to the clients when you do the presentation?
We leave a copy there. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
The things in there that they might want to review about, like the staging tips and the things to prep their home.
So you can drop off the presentation, you can drop off the comparables, and then our little paragraph to the client.
Yeah, so we usually put the comparable properties at the end of this presentation.
So we're not going to drop that off though. We're going to drop off, or we're going to mail, or we're going to email the pre-listing piece. Mm-hmm. That's all we're going to send ahead of time. And then we're going to bring this with us at the presentation.
Perfect.
Be in person. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody else have any other questions?
What do you bind your presentation with? Oh gosh, we just got a new one.
We did for the longest time. So I think we've had every single binder machine that is possible, humanly possible. Right now I don't know what it's called, but it's like the wire coated spiralizer with, we got a custom cover done and then just a plain black cover on the back.
It's from Staples, but we used to use just the one that was from like the 90s, right?
Yeah.
I mean, anything that's bound with like a clear cover on top, anything that's bound is going to look more professional than stapled.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we can put when we post this, a link to one of the spiral machine that we use.
I know a lot of people too you can order it from either, I think you can do it on Vistaprint and Staples online, or like any office supply store, and actually have them bind it for you. So if you don't want to invest in one of the binding machines, you can order, like 20 of them and then do your comparables separately.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a number of our team members do that. So they just have a big box of them already, done, and they'll just grab that, and then they'll grab their comps separately, maybe put the comps in a folder. You can do it a couple different ways.
Yeah.
All right.
If there's anything else. Yeah, so we have, someone suggested FedEx Kinko's. So, report covers. But yes, the pre-listing will be put on the members portal today. Absolutely.
So we'll have different styles for you guys too, obviously, depending on kind of the look that you like to use. So it's consistent marketing and branding. That is such a pet peeve for us. We want you to be recognizable. And when you have that recognizable look to your branding, you get that compound effect, and then your marketing really starts to work and to take off. So yeah, absolutely. If you guys have any questions, always feel free to reach out to us. Thank you so much for taking your time to watch this today. As you can see, we're super passionate, love doing listings, love doing listing presentations. And if there's anything that we could ever be of assistance with, please don't hesitate to reach out. All right.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.